Dear students, welcome you all in today's lecture on the role of civil society between India and Pakistan. Some of the important objectives of today's lecture are defining the civil society, contextualizing the role of civil society in India-Pakistan relations, highlight some of the prominent civil society initiatives between the two countries, and finally I am going to conclude the topic by assessing the role of civil society between these two countries. Let me begin by defining the civil society. Civil society emerged as a robust third sector outside the formal sphere of politics and economy, and actively promoted development and democracy in most parts of the world. It has a rich history in European political and social thought since the 17th century. In contemporary times, it has attained popularity since its rediscovery by scholar activists in Eastern Europe and Latin America in 1970s, preceded the varying forms of democratization in 1980s worldwide. Conceptions of civil society vary widely. While classical theorists defined civil society as an antithesis to the dangerous state of nature and conflated civil society with the state. On the other hand, modern theorists, especially Hegel, developed the notion of civil society as a domain parallel but separate from the state. Nevertheless, civil society, broadly speaking, is understood as an autonomous arena free from the state control, sometimes cooperating with the state but often in opposition or in rivalry with some of the state's functions as it defines public issues and defends its autonomy. In other words, it's regarded as the area outside the family, market, and the state, surrounded by spectrum of civil society actors with a wide range of purposes, structures, degree of organization, membership, and geographical coverage. The role played by the civil society groups is wide and constantly shaped by world phenomena. Traditionally, civil societies contribute to the development of state and society. Its operations and activities aim to address social, human, and economic issues such as health, education, youth empowerment, good governance, and women's safety. In the contemporary times, however, civil society are demonstrating their values as facilitators, conveners, innovators, and service providers and advocates. Over the past few decades, mainly since early 1990s, various civil society groups have made a dramatic entry into the South Asian politics. It has been quite active in shaping and influencing the politics of India and Pakistan in particular. At times, it facilitated dialogue and discussion on critical issues lingering between these two neighboring countries. And it is in this context the current lecture will analyze and assess the role of the civil society between India and Pakistan. So let me now discuss how civil society came into the politics of these two countries. In other words, I am going to contextualize the role of civil society between India and Pakistan. Over the last few decades, particularly after the emergence of globalization and the global triumph of economic liberalization, there has been a fundamental change in the nature of international politics and the conduct of interstate relations. The traditional view of politics was state-centric. Therefore, attention was focused mainly on the national level of government activity. However, now official diplomacy is supplemented by various non-state agencies and civil society groups to manage intrastate and interstate relations. The development of the multiplicity of actors and institutions has emerged in recognition that individuals and groups other than formal diplomats can also play a critical role in facilitating interstate relations. Thus, across the world, there are some encouraging examples where civil society has been quite active in facilitating the peace processes and dialogue between parties to a conflict. Though the civil society efforts are difficult to analyze and empirically investigate, yet there are some crucial examples where civil society's role has been immensely valuable in building trust among the conflicted parties, changing narratives about the long-time adversaries, creating space for dialogue around complex issues, and laying the groundwork for robust ties between communities and parties of a dispute. In some cases, widespread public support for change has even nudged governments to reconcile their differences and pursue peace. India-Pakistan relations that have always been perceived to be intractable and strained ever since their independence from the British colonial rule in 1947 could not remain immune to these changes in the diplomatic functioning experienced in different parts of the world. Moreover, fragile and least effective official diplomacy between India and Pakistan strengthened the case to search for the peace through unconventional means. The situation was becoming more dangerous after the insurgency in Kashmir, followed by the nuclearization of the South Asia, when two arch rivals, India and Pakistan, conducted nuclear tests in May 1998. The intensity of the conflict has been best described by former President of USA, Bill Clinton, in his famous words when he described the South Asian region as a nuclear flashpoint. Subsequently, the saner elements on both sides of the border became more concerned about the escalation of tension between the two neighboring countries. Various civil society groups became involved to improve the relations between these two countries. According to some studies, more than 40 private groups were engaged in multiple peace initiatives across the border. According to some estimates, the exchange programs led by various civil society groups reached more than 140 between 2003 and 2004. These peace initiatives were led by artists, musicians, scholars, and social activists, journalists, and of course students. Through the literary festivals, trade expositions, youth exchange programs, track to dialogues, capacity building workshops, civil society summits, and countless other initiatives, Indians and Pakistanis have sought to create connections, affect policy, and lay the groundwork for better relations. And this is how civil society became active in improving the Indo-Pak relations. Now let me come to the other section of the lecture, which is about the role and relevance of the civil society. Indo-Pak relations have always been intricate and strained following their independence from the British colonial rule in 1947. Over the last more than 70 odd years, both nations have remained at the loggerheads, mainly because of the political dispensation of the Jammu and Kashmir, Sar Creek, cross-border terrorism, Siachen Glacier, and of course the water sharing mechanism that was developed after 1947. The two countries have always used their substantial resources to outwit each other economically, diplomatically, and of course militarily. 3 full-fledged wars were fought between the two countries in 1947, 1965, and in 1971. In addition, there have been several serious localized military confrontations. For example, Operation Maghdood in 1984, Operation Brass Tracks in 1986 and the mini Kargil War in the year 1999. During rest of the time, the relationship can be best characterized as a Cold War or Cold Peace. The tensions between India and Pakistan spilled well beyond their disputed borders, with proxy battles taking place in Afghanistan and conflicts over economics and resources stretching into the Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf. International actors like China, Russia, and the United States have all at times taken sides and remain important actors in this enduring dispute. Amid these sporadic government-to-government efforts, individuals and NGOs have been working for decades to improve ties and keep the lines of communication intact between the two countries. This has taken the form of a trade and business missions, track to dialogues, arts and cultural exchanges, youth and education initiatives, and even cricket diplomacy. Civil society has a long and important history in shaping the political discourse between India and Pakistan. Numerous groups have sought to establish ties across the India-Pakistan border and shape debates around key political issues lingering between these two countries. As the long-time and famous Pakistani peace activist B.M. Kutte has written, groups of Indian and Pakistani scholars worked to raise awareness in the 1970s over the dangers of nuclear proliferation. Journalists and intellectuals gathered in Karachi in 1984 to discuss a range of political issues, and in 1990, eminent academics, after drafting joint statements relating to the prospects of war between India and Pakistan, shared mutual concerns with India's then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Broadly speaking, these civil society initiatives can be categorized into the following: cultural and arts, trade and business, youth and student exchange program, and women initiatives. Now let me discuss and elaborate on each of these further. To begin with, cultural and arts. Cultural exchange enhances mutual understanding by changing perceptions and increasing people-to-people contact. Cultural diplomacy between the two countries has thrived despite a volatile bilateral relationship. Some of the significant and prominent initiatives include Tehreek-e-Niswan, Ajoka Theatre Group, World Punjabi Conference, Manch Rangmanch, and Rang Karmi. Besides joint exhibitions and galleries, for instance, My East is Your West in 2015 is an example of collaborative Indian-Pakistani exhibit displayed at Biennale. Galleries featuring Indian and Pakistani artists include Experimenter, Latitude, Nature Mote, Project 88, Lakire, Jahwari Contemporary, and Art Chowk in Karachi, Lahore Literary Festival, and Jaipur Literature Festival. The cultural interactions and exchanges between artists and intellectuals of these two countries have created a momentum that appears to be irreversible. According to Shima Kirmani, the artists believe that culture, art, and creative media in general present many opportunities to promote the understanding of human rights for forging unity amongst the people of India and Pakistan. Trade and business. South Asia remains the least economically integrated region globally, and SAARC, the only regional body, failed to increase regional trade mainly as a result of the tensions between India and Pakistan. While significant growth in bilateral trade has occurred over the last few decades, rising from $600 million in 2005 to $2.8 billion in 2014, such numbers are only a fraction of its estimated potential of $18 billion annually. Given the high trade potential, NGOs have emerged to facilitate partnerships, disseminate knowledge, and encourage trade through seminars, trade shows, and venues for people-to-people interactions. And in this regard, the important joint cross-border initiative came through the formation of Punjab, Haryana, Delhi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, India-Pakistan desk in 1982. It was an essential bilateral business group formed outside the government sphere in India-Pakistan history. The group was jointly established by Punjab, Haryana and Delhi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Confederation of Indian Industry, the Karachi Chamber of Commerce and joint business councils. Over the years, it has evolved into an influential business institution commonly known as PhD chamber. It has been quite active in promoting trade between the two countries. Since its inception, the desk has been responsible for coordinating and organizing seminars, dialogues, and other exchange programs between the various business chambers of India and Pakistan. The meetings organized by Chamber made a significant impact on the relations between the two countries. The other important initiatives are Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations and Trade Fora. Both have promoted trade by increasing company brand recognition, cultivating partnerships, and hosting conferences, trade shows, and lectures. Youth exchange programs. India and Pakistan are experiencing a significant youth bulge. Youth bulge presents great challenges to a country's political and economic stability. But Indian and Pakistani youth knows little of one another, dimming the hope for peace even further. Given this, youth exchange programs and fora thus offer the opportunity for meaningful and positive change in the perceptions that Indians and Pakistani students have of their counterparts, making the youth sector a vital component of civil society. The hope is that the youth participants of these exchange programs become advocates in their communities to remove emotional barriers, deeming neighboring peoples as the other. There are multiple examples when students from these countries participate in the exchange program. For instance, in 2001, 15 female students from Khaldunia School in Pakistan came to India under a student exchange program called Asli Summit. In the same year, Seeds of Peace, a US-based organization, launched a program bringing together young leaders from Mumbai, Lahore, and other cities of Pakistan to address tension-prone relationship between India and Pakistan. And over the years, it trained hundreds of students under its year-long program, inculcating skills to the young generation that would help them become effective peace builders. In March 2013, under the Seeds of Peace Cultural Exchange Program, 6 Indian students went to Lahore City. The students were hosted by their Pakistani counterparts for 1 week, and at the end of this visit, a joint resolution was passed to urge the governments in both countries to ease visa policies and encourage more student exchange programs. Some student exchange programs have also led to the formation of Youth Initiative for Peace. The fundamental purpose of this group is to improve the relations between the two countries. The group has successfully organized some significant art, cultural, and educational interactions in the region. In December 2002, it conducted a week-long cultural festival called Focus South Asia, in which young people from across the South Asia region participated. In 2003, YIP hosted 10-day program known as Youth Without Borders in Karachi. During the program, several participants came from India, and at the end of this event, a short film titled as Bas Enough was screened on the stage. The participants later jointly made the film highlighting the people's miseries living in these two countries. Like YIP, another youth group was formed in 2004 in Mumbai known as Indo-Pak Youth Forum for Peace. The founders of the forum identify its objectives as bringing together young Indians and Pakistanis to initiate dialogue, promote peace, develop constructive networks and intergenerational partnerships involving young people and elders of the society. Further, it sought to exchange peace delegations of youth and hold joint conferences, workshops, seminars and literary cultural events to promote solidarity between the youth of these two countries. Another important example is Exchange for Change, a program jointly run by Roots to Roots, a Delhi-based non-profit organization, and the Citizens Archive of Pakistan. The project was launched in December 2010. Over the next 16 months, 2,500 students in Karachi, Lahore, Delhi and Mumbai engaged in a sustained dialogue through the exchange of letters, photographs and oral histories. As part of this program, the organizations arranged for a 19-member delegation comprising teachers, students, organization members to cross Wagah border for a week-long visit to Delhi and then to Lahore. The project was so successful that requests for other such initiatives began to pour in from educational institutions in India and Pakistan. These student exchange programs have led to the change in the account of partition and post-partition developments and helped break down the stereotype notions against each other, which have been crept through textbooks, feature films, media, and various other sources of means. In the process, they have also understood their shared cultural and political history. It is believed that once students would go back to their respective countries, they would take positive memories and new experiences with them. Women initiatives. Several women groups across the border took several initiatives towards building peace between the two countries. The first significant women interaction between the two countries occurred when Farida Sher, part of a non-governmental family planning association of Pakistan, invited Indian peace activist Kamla Bhasin to Pakistan as a family planning trainer. She also invited another Indian trainer, Madhu Sen, to Pakistan for Family Planning Association initiatives Smoke Less Chula project in 1985. According to Sher, these interactions and exchanges erected peace constituencies in the region. In 1988, a group of Pakistani women led by Shirkat Gah came to India to study the Chipko movement. This culminated in the first ever joint India-Pakistan conference on the environment in Lahore. The conference was organized by the World Conservation Union, Pakistan, and the Center for Science and Environment, India. This was followed by a month-long regional workshop in Bangalore in August 1989 on community issues. Later, women trainers from India went to Pakistan to conduct a similar seminar in Lahore. Zakia Sarwar, a Pakistani college teacher and the founder of Society Pakistan English Language Teachers, invited Dr. S.K. Verma, then Director of Center for English and Foreign Languages, Hyderabad, and few other women from India to participate in an annual SPELT International Conference in Pakistan in 1988. Professor Zakia Sarwar believed that there is a desperate need in both countries to overhaul curricula and textbooks for indigenous research and address the issue of mutual concern. Similarly, in the second half of 1980s, Kanad College Lahore held a few exchange programs in which several of its erstwhile students now living in India were invited. While coming for these meetings at the college, the guests from India received a warm welcome at the international airport in Pakistan. Some of these exchange programs were attended by prominent political figures, including the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mian Nawaz Sharif. In the post-1990, new actors such as Lady Shri Ram College, New Delhi joined in. The college organized several exchange programs for their students, which have been helpful to build multiple sustainable civil society partnerships between India and Pakistan and strengthen the strategic partnership to facilitate dialogue and build trust between the third generations of both these nations. Over the years, a large number of similar programs, conferences, seminars, cultural exchange interactions, and workshops have been held by different women groups based in the two nations, particularly at times when all official and semi-official means of communication were suspended. For instance, immediately after the Kargil War, when both the nations were on the brink of war, the Women's Initiative for Peace in South Asia, commonly known as WIPSA, established two chapters in Delhi and Lahore, which ultimately led to an India-Pakistan Women's Peace Bus, which traveled to Pakistan on 25th March 2000. The bus carried 41 Indian women to Lahore through Wagah border, led by the veteran Gandhian and former Rajya Sabha member Nirmala Deshpande. The group represented different faiths, generations, and diverse political perspectives to build concrete strategies for peace and harmony in both the countries. In addition to overt public conflicts, the focus of these women-led exchange programs is also on the issues related to private and public violence against women in the region. Thus, the women from these two countries have sustained cross-border friendship and association and retained a sense of solidarity developed during various bilateral programs and conferences. To conclude, the historical impasse and the changing political dynamics in India-Pakistan relations present a unique opportunity to strengthen and innovate peace movements between citizens on a transnational level. Civil society's flexibility and transnational reach can help determine innovative spaces and new fora for engagement. These interactions serve to break stereotypical images of hostility and hatred. It has also created new peace constituencies in the two countries with more commitment and sincerity to work for peace and betterment of the region. There is strong hope that more formidable constituencies of peace will emerge, which will eventually help to prevent the rise of any new conflict between the two countries. It is hoped that this civil society will lead South Asia towards a comprehensive peace. With this, dear students, I am signing off from today's lecture. Hope you have understood it. Thanks for watching.